Welcome to Sparks of History, where Jewish history and world history meet. We are very pleased and honored to have with us today Rabbi Meir Goldberg. Rabbi Goldberg has diligently spent decades working with Jewish students at Rutgers University, and Rabbi Goldberg founded the MEOR Jewish Xperience, a Olami affiliate, which is a network of campuses around the United States, helping students connect with their Jewish roots. Rabbi Goldberg studied at the Beis Medrash Gevoha in Lakewood, New Jersey, and previously served as rabbi at Torah Links. So thank you, Rabbi Goldberg, for being with us. We appreciate it very, very much. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Okay. Just to get started, what exactly is the MEOR Rutgers Jewish Xperience?
Right. No E. So we started about 20 years ago, 2004. I walked onto campus as part of a group that was going out under the guidance of Rabbi Jacobowitz, who is sort of like the grandfather of campus outreach.
A neighbor of
Really
mine. A neighbor of mine.
Oh, okay. All right. So now you feel the Kedusha.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really at that time, the ones on camp, there were some Hillels, which at the time, did have some Orthodox rabbis. There was Chabad. Chabad has been on campus, I think, since Berkeley in 1949. But there were not anyone who were sort of like non-Chabad from the yeshiva world. So Rabbi Jacobowitz really started that whole movement. Rabbi Ben Sam Klatsko and the Zarets were in Jam in Los Angeles at the time, and I think Effie Flom was in Baltimore campuses, but they wanted to really have a push to get us out onto campus. And so I went with a group of 20 other people to different campuses. I was living in Lakewood at the time, I still do, and they said, you're closest to Rutgers, so go to Rutgers. And, I brought in Rabbi Yeshua Lewis a year later, and him and his wife Esther were with us for about 10 years. And Rabbi Aaron Grossman joined in 2010. And Rabbi Lewis and his wife started something called MEOR, New Jersey, which was for young professionals in 2015. Me and Rabbi Grossman really began as partners. I mean, we were there the entire time, but we began as partners in 2016, in my 11th year. And Rabbi Grossman really helped grow the organization first to Columbia. Then we joined forces with Rabbi Aaron Eisenman in the Lower Manhattan campuses. And we started a program at Princeton and now Northwestern, and the latest one is Hofstra. So we changed the name from Rutgers Jewish Xperience to just sort of like more Jewish Xperience, or just plain Jewish Xperience, to reflect the bigger network.
And what does the organization do? What exactly is the mission statement, and how do you get that done?
So we send out as many staff as we can onto different campuses, and we try to work with students to to maximize their Jewish their spiritual experience and their spiritual impact. And so we want each student to be able to get a Jewish education. Most of the students we're working with have very little Jewish background. We do work with a number of students who grew up in the modern Orthodox system who sort of fell out. So we work with those students as well. We want to maximize their experience. We do a lot of Torah learning with them. We do a lot of Shabbatons with them. We take them on trips to Eretz Yisrael, to Poland, and to other places where they have, really good Jewish experiences. We become very, very close with the students, and really they become part of like a family. And whatever they're able to do, whatever they're willing to take on and to do and to grow, will help them get there. And that's really the mission statement of the program. Some people, everybody's at a different level. So
I went on to the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL's website recently, and they grade each university college in America as in terms of how it's dealing with anti-Semitism on campus. They give Rutgers a D grade. Deficient approach is what they call that in dealing with anti-Semitism. Would you agree with that? And what has been your experience overall on the campuses that you're working with, especially since October 7th?
So the only campus where it got really rough, even physically, was Columbia. That became really tough, and it was dangerous at certain points for the students to be on campus, and that's when they left. April time left the campus, and everything went virtual. Rutgers has been a tough place for the Jewish students, but nobody was, beaten up or threatened physically. But it does take an impact when students lose their friend group because they're ostracized for defending Israel, or students have to listen to very loud Palestinian protests, screaming and yelling about we don't want Zionists here, or some of the other things that they say, or calling for Intifada. So that definitely takes a toll on the students. There's not a physical threat that I know of that occurs, on campus. Although one of the girls was doxxed. I know that some of the newspapers, picked up on that story. We are in contact with the university. I do want people to understand that the universities operate within a left-wing progressive type of bubble, which is much more, their world really is much more aligned with, movements that are, I guess, more progressive, and certainly the pro-Palestinian movement will be like that. So it's very hard for them to take action against anti-Semitism because it is perceived by people that they surround themselves with, even if they understand that things are anti-Semitic. The people that they are surrounding themselves with, perceive it as just, pro-Palestinian, not anti-Semitic. By dint of the fact that you're involved in a university, you know that that's going to be their position because that's the default position of the university system. So yeah, a person has to be a realist as to what a university is going to be willing to do vis-a-vis the Palestinian movement and vis-a-vis Jews.
Since October 7th, have you seen an increase or rise in interest among students in Judaism, and how is that played out? How is that manifested?
Absolutely. There's been at least a 20% rise, maybe even 30%. Olami in general has seen a 30% impact, a rise in attendance since October 7th. This is after a 20% increase after COVID, where Olami had 320 campus centers, and they went from, and since October 7th, there's been a very large bump and interest amongst the students. There was a student, for example, at Hofstra who was posting pro-Israel material on social media, and he got death threats. He got all types of threats, and he had to actually leave because the pressure got too much to him, for him. So those type of students, who are being threatened or pushed around, or they want to know, well, so what, so why am I Jewish, and what is this all about, and why is Israel important? They know for the first time in maybe 50 years that they don't want to be non-Jews because many of the non-Jews now are expressing a deep hatred of Jews. It's become okay to hate Jews on campus. So they're like, okay, so now I know I don't want to be like them, but what is Judaism? What is my connection over here? Is Israel really right, or am I being gaslit about Israel being really the murderers? Or is Israel correct? And what is the reason why Israel is correct? What is their case? What is the case for Israel? And what is our connection to Eretz Yisrael? So we'll go through with them, Psukim and Lech Lecha, and just go through the basics. And we always had students who were like traditional Sephardi, from Sephardi backgrounds that would come to us and be involved. But we had a hard time connecting to sort of like the Tenafly Ashkenazi Jews from Tel Aviv, people whose parents were from there, for them to get involved. And they started actually coming as well, because they're not necessarily looking for religion, but they need a place that's safe and to really understand, who they are and where they come from. So there is a tremendous increase. There's a tremendous bump that's occurring now, not just on campus. I'm having people, tell me about what's going on, just people that they meet, that they want to get back involved. So if anybody has any connection to relatives who are secular or business associates or anybody, now would be a good time to go back to them and say, hey, you want to learn? You want to come for Shabbos? You want to come for a meal? Something like that.
Are you finding that with the increase in Judaism and people exploring their roots, there's also a corresponding group that's kind of trying to hide their Judaism, or not? They're college kids, and they're out there looking for something.
On certain campuses like Columbia, you will find very left-wing Jews who are so distant from Judaism and have such a small Jewish identity that it didn't impact them at all, and they're and it's pushing them to actually go with the people in the encampments. It's hard for us to tell how big of a crowd that is because we never really historically would get people we would not generally get students who were of that nature. Generally, the left-wing students would stay away from us. The staff is Orthodox, even though we're very welcoming and everybody's welcome and we're very inclusive as much as we can be. But the sort of like the real hardcore left-wing students who are very woke would stay away from us because of the way we appear and so on. So it's hard for us to read exactly what's going on, but I would imagine there's probably a significant number of students who have gone underground and just are hiding their Judaism because it doesn't mean enough for them to really, feel proud about it and to really, to flaunt it or to make it bigger in any way.
Do you find, Rabbi Goldberg, that Jewish students that come into the campuses, so obviously you have the unaffiliated or the ones that have not received or received a minimal Jewish education, and you're reaching out to them and you're making an impact on them. Are they prepared to handle what's happening on campus, whether it's anti-Semitism or anti-Zionism? And you had referenced before modern Orthodox students. Are they coming prepared to handle the situation?
Generally speaking, the modern Orthodox students come a little bit better prepared because there's a big emphasis on Zionism in the modern Orthodox system. But even then, a lot of them don't have the tools to really fight the battle on campus. It really depends on the student. The secular students, generally speaking, do not have the tools to fight the battle for Israel, and that's something that we had not been involved in that much in the past, but got much more involved in now, because even though our main focus and our main purpose is to give the students a real deep traditional Jewish education, that they should become, conversant in what Judaism is, and they should understand what Shabbos is and really get a deep understanding of their roots. But we found that the requirement of the moment right now is for them to have a deep understanding of their connection to Eretz Yisrael historically and spiritually, politically, and all that. And so therefore we did bring in Hasbara experts and people to really help them understand the case for Israel. So I would say, generally speaking, they're not so equipped for it. They also never had to have this battle. Many of the secular students have never experienced anti-Semitism before because they're not overtly Jewish. When I was young, it was very common for me to be a victim of anti-Semitism, and it didn't really mean much. It didn't bother me that much. I remember having pennies thrown at me walking down the streets of New Jersey one time when I was in high school there. In ninth grade, I remember being shouted out when I was in Scranton Yeshiva, from people. Growing up in Far Rockaway, we would be not attacked physically, although one of my friends was attacked, but it was something which was common. My children living in Lakewood would walk down the county line road, and near their yeshiva would be cursed out at least once a month for being Jewish. So when you're visibly religious, you sort of experience anti-Semitism as a matter of course, and so it doesn't really mean that much. But when you're secular, it's the first time you've heard these things. It really shakes their world up, and then they really are trying to figure out. So what do we need to know, and how do we fight for Israel, and how do we fight for Judaism? And that's something which became much more relevant this year.
You had mentioned, Rabbi Goldberg, that obviously there are different organizations on the college campuses. There's MEOR, the Jewish Xperience. There's Chabad. There's Hillel. Given the difficult times that the students are going through today, are the organizations working together, or does it work better that each has their niche, each has their different approach, and so that makes it easier to get as many students as possible involved because there are different approaches that speak to different people?
In the past, very much at Rutgers, for sure, each organization really worked independently. We found just in general that there was a nice symbiosis when everybody did their own thing. I developed a nice relationship with the Chabad rabbi, Rabbi Shai Shigalov, but everybody would kind of do their own thing. It wasn't really a lot of fighting. It was each place had their own little kingdom, as it were. But since October 7th, really the night afterwards, right after Yom Tov is over, we all got on the phone together, and we've done a lot of things, a lot of pro-Israel activity, a lot of rallies and things together. Thank you, Hashem called us up, and they said that we want to have a Hanukkah party with 500 students there. I said, great. I can get you the 500 students, but I don't have a building. Chabad has a big, beautiful building at Rutgers, and we called them up, and they hosted it together, and it was, hosted. We were sponsored. It was sponsored by us and by Chabad and by Hillel, and so were a lot of the rallies and the vigils and things of that nature. So there's been a lot of collaborative activity since we began, right after October 7th, where it wasn't necessarily that in the past. That's at Rutgers, where there's a nice, connection. Not every campus has that. Each campus has a different nature. There are some campuses that we're at where we're the most pro-Israel, and then like the Hill might be, they have the pressure to sort of also be inclusive of the progressive crowd, which might be even pro-Palestinian. It really depends on the Hill. The Hill in Rutgers is solidly pro-Israel, but not every Hill is like that. And so, on some campuses, we're really the ones who are out in front, the most pro-Israel of all the groups. But it really depends from campus to campus.
There's an idea that's thrown out that every Jew that has a strong Jewish background has the potential to engage in outreach in kiruv. How does the average layperson work with you, or could work with you, in reaching out to people beyond either college students or beyond college students? What resources are you able to provide, or how would you like to work with the average people like us out there?
So I always tell everybody to be involved as much as possible. If you have your own connections and your own people that you could learn with or invite for Shabbos, you should certainly do so. And even if you'll get a no, just ask the question. Firstly, you might be surprised, and at least you can tell Hashem, I tried. I approached the person, I asked them to learn, they didn't want to do it. Okay, so now you're exempt. But before you didn't know that, so you have to, so you still have to ask the question. We have a lot of students who are happy to learn with chabrusas, either on campus, where people can come to the campus and learn with students. And I have alumni who are willing to learn with people over the phone or over Zoom. So I could certainly set that up if that's something that people are interested in doing. So those are some opportunities. And we definitely have a lot of people who are willing to host for Shabbos. It's very hard to get someone as a one-off just to go somewhere for Shabbos. They usually don't like to go by themselves, to someplace that they don't know. But when we go to different communities for Shabbatons, we always are happy to have people host the students. When we take the students to those Shabbaton spots.
So, are you finding, Rabbi Goldberg, there's a heightened sense of responsibility, urgency in even like in communities like Lakewood, which are bastions of Jewish learning, that there's maybe a new look approach, or maybe it always existed in terms of opening up their homes or trying to help programs like yours?
Yeah, people were always happy to help and always open to bring the people in. I can't say there's been a drastic change, but it's always been something that people were always very willing and able to do. For years, we went to Rockaway in the 5 towns. We still do that, and we brought students to Lakewood for many years, and Passaic and Muncie and Jackson and Tom's River now, and all different places. Highland Park and Edison has always been a place where we go to twice a year. So these are all communities that have been very, very welcoming to our students for many, many years. And students are very appreciative, and they're responsive to the hosts. And so, for the most part, people have done really a fantastic job in connecting with these students. And it's very important, because the students don't want to be like myself or the other rabbis. They're not looking to be rabbis, but they do want to see that you can have a nice, normal, healthy, happy home and be a professional and make some money, and also be an observant Jew. So that's something which is very, very critical and crucial. So in a certain sense, a layperson has a greater ability to impact a student than I do, because they have something which I don't, which is that they're a regular person out in the real world, And that's a dogma, that's an example of something that these students can themselves become.
Having spent decades, 20 years, 2 decades on the college campus scene in America, are you optimistic or pessimistic regarding the future of Jewish students at American universities and colleges?
Well, now is the best time in 50 years to reach students, so I'm very optimistic. We're very bullish on what's going on now, and I don't think that's gonna lessen at all. I mean, certainly students who are far away will continue to be far away, but there's an openness now that we have not seen in the past. So now is the time, and really, what I wish what would happen is if there was an increase in people willing to get involved on campus in a real way, and there was also the funds to go along with that to really increase that. Because if we had 200 more people and the funds for 200 more people, we could reach probably another 50, 60,000 students. And it's just a matter of manpower and getting out there, and we would have a tremendous impact. We're already having a tremendous impact, but we'd have even a bigger impact if we just had the capability of reaching those people. And it's really more than you think, because people think that, the only ones that we change are the ones who go all the way and become Shomer Shabbos, but that's not true. It's true that there are many hundreds and hundreds of students, probably 800 students each year who become Shomer Shabbos or Shomer Torah Mitzvos, in our college network across the country. But it's even more than that. I'll give you an example. There's a big battle in the religious world in Israel about, do you take the yeshiva boys and send them to the army, or don't send them to the army? And if you trace it back, the battle really began anew around the time that Naftali Bennett became prime minister. And I always thought to myself, I actually met Bennett a few times, and he's a person who actually observes Shabbos, and he didn't grow up that way. He was someone who sort of came to it, and he's something of a Baal Tshuva. And I'm thinking to myself, so why did Bennett push so hard for the yeshiva boys to go to yeshiva? And the answer is because he doesn't understand. He doesn't have a connection to a rabbi or to a mentor who represents what Torah is and what being a ben Torah, what being a Torah personality is. Imagine if he had a campus rabbi who he was close to, who he studied with, and nothing came from it. He didn't become religious. He just continued on his way, however it was. And so people would have said, it's a shame. You see, it didn't work, and he didn't change, but it's not true, because his attitude would have changed. And when he would have gotten to become the prime minister, he wouldn't have had this push so much to draft the yeshiva boys, because he would have said, I understand what they're trying to accomplish. I understand what a Torah personality is, because my old campus rabbi was something like that, and I understand what they're trying to. I see there's value in what they're trying to do. But if we don't ever make the case to the secular world, even if they won't become Shomer Shabbos, and even if they won't become like religious Jews, but if we don't ever make the case to most of the secular Jewry of why there are 3,300 years of Jewish history is relevant to them, and the fact that they're even here means that they had great grandparents and great grandparents and great grandparents somewhere along the way, 1,800 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 600 years ago, were literally willing to die instead of marrying out. And they could have easily married out and could have easily converted out and saved themselves. And instead they wanted to remain Jews. If we don't make that case and don't explain to young people who are secular why that's relevant to them, then we can't be upset if they want to go ahead and impact our society in a negative way. So we want to know, well, what should the religious community have done in Israel, to try to get the secularists not to try to draft yeshiva boys? Well, if he would have been on the campuses 30 and 20 years ago, and we would have been on the campuses now, they would have had a good understanding of what a yeshiva produces and what its value is. So aside from the value of getting people to become more Torah observant, there's an important deep value of getting a person to become a maimon, that he believes in God, that God is relevant, that he has some connection to Eretz Yisrael, and that Israel is correct and is the one who should be defended, not attacked. Those things have value also, and the only way we can convey value to secular Jews is we're able to have time with them, that we could connect with them and bring them into something which is their heritage, the Torah and Shabbos and the land of Israel, which we take them to a lot. And when you do that, you show them real value, show them the history, show them they're part of something which is 3,500 years old. they're not, they might not have the courage to become, Shomer Shabbos, but they will become defenders of Judaism, defenders of Torah, and defenders of Israel.
This has been fascinating. It's just I know, the tip of the iceberg of what you're doing, and you should go from chayil to chayil, from strength to strength in all your activities, and get all the funding that you need to expand all across the United States. And again, Rabbi Goldberg, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thanks so much. It was great to be here.
Thank you.